There's a typical talk that I give about peer community being the future of science, but after talking to Hero and realizing that you're considering doing something with undergraduates, I changed a little bit the structure of the presentation. So rather than talking about the importance of open science and why we need register reports and what is peer community in register report, I switched things around a little bit. So you'll see a slightly different structure. Yeah, just very quickly, happy to be here. I was here 7 years ago, visiting, have some collaborators here in different positions and stages, and it's just nice to be back in the UK. It's been a while. So we collaborate a lot. So I decided at some point 7 years ago, so rather than collaborating up, I'm going to collaborate down or the same. So I really believe in empowering early career researchers and students to try and do real science as early as undergraduate. I give a lot of talks about the team and what we're doing. We call this team the core team. So there's a bunch of, it's collaborative open science research team. So we're talking about large team science. So Hero and I are part of a large group of 50 early career researchers from around the world. I think 10 of them are from the UK. And we try to do a lot of open science together, mostly with replications and extensions. Also, if you want all of my teaching materials, so I teach open science, I teach judgment decision making and social psychology, everything, the videos and the slides is uploaded to the open science framework, so you're welcome to take it all and use this as you like. So the main question that I had back when I was a postdoc and not teaching is that when I become an assistant professor, what can I actually do with students? So the basic expectation at the University of Hong Kong that they give you this social psychology book, and they say, okay, just teach this. Go through this, and it's the very typical, you with your PowerPoint, people write, memorize day before the exam, dump it, and then they forget everything the day after. And I wanted to do something different. I wanted to work with people, work with the students on real science projects that have an impact. So the first questions that you have when you think about something like that is that can students really do high quality science? Can they produce something that would be publishable, that would meet the highest criteria of science, of open science? Can they really contribute to the community? And now that I've done this for 5-6 years now, I have a very strong evidence in support of yes. So coming to University of Hong Kong, I revamped everything that they did with the undergraduate courses. So I teach judgment decision making, advanced social psychology. These are electives or capstone. I don't know if you have this concept, but it's more advanced students that are interested in research, and they can choose to do this with me, or they can choose other capstones or other electives. So I get to, I get people who are already, students that are already research oriented, and then if they don't like me in the first 2 weeks when we align expectations, they can choose somebody else. So I tried to model things after a few papers that came out in 2012, and these big headlines 2018, so that's a year after I finished my postdoc, about students are the answer to psychology's replication crisis, and you can do all sorts of things in teaching replications, and then more recently, Dan Quintana, from Everything Hurts, this paper in Nature Human Behavior, saying that we need to work more with the students. So I'll just show you in the last 3 years out of the 6 years what we've done, which is I think a complete revolution of the way we approach working with students. So I'll just start from the result. Rather than the problems and how I address them and why I chose to do this, I'll just show you the impact of what we've done. So since 2021, all of the undergraduates and the masters, the top masters that are doing a thesis with me, so every year it's about 7 to 10, all of them must submit their thesis as a stage 1 registered report to this community called Peer Community in Registered Report. How many of you are familiar with peer community? Have you heard of this? Anyone? Okay, 2. So I'll talk a little bit about what peer community is. But you can treat this as a journal. So basically, all of the students, as early as undergraduates, submit their thesis to a journal as a register report. So it means that they first write a pre-registration, they send the pre-registration to a journal for peer review, get an in-principle acceptance, and then proceed to the data collection. I'll talk about how that works. After the 3 years that we've been running this, a few of them are already published with the stage 2, with all the, so 2 of them already. And then we've got all these in-principle acceptances. So that means that all of them are guaranteed publication. So regardless of what the outcome is, they're going to get published. So we've got a bunch here, a bunch there. And there's a bunch of other that keep going. So overall, there's more than 20 of these students, undergraduates and top masters, that submitted, after working with me, their thesis to the community, received in-principle acceptance. It's just a matter of time getting through the stage 2 all the way to the final publication. So just to make clear that we all understand what register report are. So all of these things are basically undergraduates. So you can see the first ones are all guided students that completed the register report, and this is a guaranteed publication. So they can already add this on their CV. It'll take a while until this finalizes. So if you want to see what that looks like, so what does it look like for an undergraduate to write a registered report? We've been working on one, Hero and I. As a team, we've done 35 of those altogether. I'll summarize some of that. But if you want to see an example of the published ones, the ones that are the most advanced, you can click on either one of those. I'll just show you a brief example of what that looks like. So this is Kirk, an undergraduate. They graduated 2 years ago. He was one of the first to go through the whole process. We did a replication of Peters et al. From 2006. What you can see here is that submitting to peer community in register report, this is a new initiative. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is, but we got very high profile recommenders. So for example, Chris Chambers is the person who initiated register report. I met Chris Chambers in Padova, I think in 2019, and we were talking about me wanting to do registered reports with undergraduates, but not being able to. So we were sitting there talking, it's like, what is the big challenge for running a registered report as a thesis? So I told Chris, one of the big challenges is time. We just don't have time. A very limited time. So I have them for 6-8 months, and then I need to complete an entire registered report from beginning to end. How do you do that? And Chris Chambers said, wait 2 years. We're working on a registered report 2.0, and he really delivered in 2021. Peer community in registered report came out, which allowed for this to happen. And I'll show you how that magic happens. How can we do this within 6 to 8 months? But at the beginning, there were not many editors, and he was one of the editors. So actually, he agreed to be the editor for all of my undergraduate students. At the beginning, I went on Twitter and said, I want to run a registered report with all the undergraduates, and many of the editors said, really? Undergraduates from Hong Kong, what's going on? You're wasting community resources. But Chris Chambers said, no, this is important. We want to try this out first for peer community, to see that peer community really works, and then for undergraduates. If this indeed works, then we want to be able to support and show that as a proof of concept. So it's amazing to have Chris Chambers do that. So here you can see the recommendation that he wrote for stage 2. You can click on this and see the endorsement that he had. But even before that, we received an IPA, so before data collection, he did an entire review. If you go on there, not only do you see the endorsement, but you see open peer review with the names. So one of the things that are very important for me, after many disappointments with replications, I do a lot of replications. All of these are replications. But the problem is that when we submit this to peer review, typically the editors invite the original authors, and some of them are very, very hostile. They hide it a little bit, especially if it's not open or if it's not identified. They let themselves go. So I was looking for a platform where it would be open and identified, and especially you have a conflict of interest. If you were the original authors, you have some kind of vested interest in this. So peer community allows the authors, us, to ask for identified open peer review. And this is what I asked for each one of these replications. And aside from one case, which is a very interesting thing to talk about some other time, all of the peer review that we received through peer community is very, very positive. So you can see here the endorsement by the community. And what's revolutionary about the peer community and registry report is that once the community, this new journal, endorses your manuscript, you can choose as the author which of the many supportive journals to publish with. So for example, one supportive journal is Collabora Psychology. So once we have an endorsement from the community, Collabora says we'll automatically publish this with no additional peer review. So you can choose, do I want to go to International Review of Social Psychology, Collabora Psychology, there's a whole list of journals, and I'll show you what that list is. In addition, everything about the whole process is on the OSF and is open. Not only the peer review, but also how we replied to the peer review. So if you go to any one of these, you'll see that in the stage 1, we just talked about this before the talk started, we simulate data. So you can see the simulated data set and the planned data analysis with our markdown, everything produced. And you can see every stage of so here you can see the first submission, the second submission, and the stage 2, we had 2 revisions. So every time how we responded to all the peer review. This is the second one, this is Timothy. And he completed this, and he just, I think a week ago, wrote this for Psychology Today. So this is where he summarized this. So he gave a talk, if you want to hear an undergraduate present their published project. You're welcome to go and click on this. But for him, the way that he sees this, and this is not the only one, as an undergraduate, he completed 2 of these with me. So he summarizes this as the best learning experience for researchers. So he has learned a lot. So if you're looking for somebody who has 2 publications as an undergraduate with a lot of open science experience, that's definitely him. So he goes through, in the Psychology Today, his whole process of what does it mean as an undergraduate to submit to the community and get peer review from editors like Chris Chambers and all the big names. And you can see who these big names are and their peer review. So the way that I summarize this with all the 20 plus is that this is a very successful proof of concept. I actually don't know why other universities are not trying to do the same. So I go on Twitter every time and I say, look what the students are doing, look what the students are doing. You should do the same. But other universities, like, we can't see ourselves doing something like this. And my question is, why? We've already shown that this works. So many people have doubts. How are we going to do this? How is this possible? So I'm going to walk you through some of the tips that I have to how to pull this off here in RHUL Holloway. But keep this in mind that we've already shown that this is possible to do with undergraduates and top masters. So how to do this? So the first and big challenge, and the one that Chris Chambers solved for me with peer community, is these very, very tight deadlines. So just to talk very briefly, just so we're all aligned and know exactly what registry reports are, before we go to registry report 2.0, is that this is the traditional model. And this is a broken model for many, many reasons, but we all know this model. You plan, you write, you collect the data, finalize the manuscript, and only then you submit this to peer review. But this is already too late. First of all kinds of biases, outcome bias, hindsight bias, confirmation bias, scams, all sorts of things. Plus, for the author, this is too late because the data has been collected. Nothing much that you can do about this, aside from go back to collect another data if the reviewers say something is wrong. Instead, Chris Chambers, back in 2013 in Cortex, started with this model of registry reports where we have 2 stages. The stage 1 happens for the pre-registration. So you submit your pre-registration to the journal before any data collection. And then you can all work together with the community, with the reviewers, to improve the pre-registration. So you can ensure all sorts of things You specified your hypotheses. Are you well powered? Is there an alignment between the hypothesis and the methods? Is this a fair test? Everybody can agree on this before the data collection. Now, after everybody agrees, the editor, the reviewers, and the author agree on this, then, and this is the revolutionary thing about a registry report, they grant you an in-principle acceptance, which means that no matter what happens, what the results are, it's going to be published. And then the second stage review, just make sure that you adhered to the stage 1 protocol or noted all the deviations and justified them, right? So you can deviate, you can add exploratory stuff, you can do whatever you want in stage 2, as long as you're very clear what is confirmatory and follow the pre-registration and what is exploratory, and you add it afterwards. So stage 2 for us is usually a breeze. It happens very, very fast because everything has been agreed on in stage 1. Now comes peer community and registry report, which adds very, very important things. And here you can see the comparisons about what is a regular traditional journal that's not a registry report, what is a registry report, and then all the innovations that peer community does. So for example, one of the innovations, I don't know why other journals are not doing this, but they have something called scheduled track, which they guarantee peer review within 2 weeks. And this is the thing that allowed me to run this with undergraduates. Because once you know that you get things within 2 weeks, then you can structure everything to get the stage 1 approved in time for them to, for us to collect the data and do everything else within the 6-8 months period. I'll explain how this magic happens in a second. Another thing is that instead of going to one journal and then maybe getting rejected from that journal, and then you go to another journal and get rejected from that, and then you go to another journal, you don't need to do all of that. You go to one place, which is the community, and if the community endorses that, then you have the power to choose which journal to go with. So it shifts everything from the publishers to the authors and the community. And in addition, and I mentioned this, is that we really wanted open peer review. It's good for us because especially if we do applications, everything is very sensitive. So we want the community to be able to see how our paper was reviewed. But it's also good for the reviewers because they can put this on their CV. It's citable. You can cite your own reviews and say, I contributed to the community. Look and see how I reviewed papers. And these are just 3 of the many advantages that this community has. How do they do this magic with a scheduled report? They have something called a snapshot. So you create a 1-page that has the hypothesis, the research question, the hypothesis, generally the methods, and the planned analysis that you're going to have at the end. So you submit the snapshot 6 weeks before you want the peer review. They use the snapshot in order to recruit reviewers. While you work on this, so during these 6 weeks, I can go and work with my students in order to finalize our submission. And they ask the reviewers, would you be available for this week? 6 weeks in advance that you're going to be available for this week. And they're committed to providing this peer review within 1 week. And if you don't pressure them, accept this now and do the peer review now, but you give them 6 weeks to prepare and put this on their calendar, then they really adhere to this. So it's amazing to see. At the beginning, I told Chris, I don't think this is going to work. Nobody is going to live up to this. Until now, with all the 30 plus that we've done, they really lived up to the 2 weeks. So 1 week is the reviewers, 1 week for the editor, and they're able to do this very well. So snapshot, super easy. I don't know why other journals are not doing this, but this allowed us to do things very, very differently. So you just need to schedule things very well.
Sorry, thank you.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, so within 8 weeks, you can get, 6 weeks you work, they recruit, 2 weeks you get a decision. And then another nice thing about the peer community and registry report, they really try to give you a decision maker that says, if you do A, B, C, D, then no need for an additional peer review. So they really try to decrease the load on the community, only if there's a real significant thing that the recommender cannot solve by him or herself, then they send this back to review. Then this community power. Right now, there are two types of journals that embrace the community. Here you see the friendly ones are the ones that will automatically publish this with no additional peer review. So you've got some familiar names. Advances in Methods and Practices in Psychological Science is one of them. Collaborative Psychology. The ones that are Cortex. So if you're a neuro, I would, as a neuro person, I tell all the people in my department, if I'm a neuro person, I would just submit everything to peer community and just, Cortex. More and more, the APA journal comes out. PeerJ, almost all of them. A journal that I like but still doesn't have all the impact factors is Meta Psychology. They do reproducibility checks. Recently, International Review of Social Psychology that we've used. So these will automatically publish this with no additional peer review. Here you have the peer community interested journals. So they sit in the back and they get a notification every time there is an IPA, an in-principle acceptance for a stage 1. And happened to me, first time in my life, that the editor comes to me and says, we read the registered report stage 1 by your undergraduate student. We would like you to please publish this with us. So before Collabora became friendly, Collabora was actually interested. Simine Wazir was there. She's now the editor of Psychological Science. And she kept sending me these emails saying, would you publish with us? Would you publish with us? The problem for me was that Collaborative Psychology has an APC. $1,000, 900, I can't remember. And then I just said, we have choice, so I can go to any of the other journals. Would you waive the APCs? And they did. So last year we had 7 published with Collabora through peer community, and they waived the APCs for all of those. So when you have power, when you have choice, when you can go to any one of those, then the publishers suddenly are willing to let go of things like APCs. So that is amazing. I just told them, we're unfunded. This is an undergraduate student. We cannot pay the $1,000. So they waived it. So you've got things like Nature Human Behavior. I think that's a big target for all of us. There used to be a Journal of Experimental Psychology. So there are journals, and it keeps expanding, and some of them are moving to becoming interested, friendly after being interested. PLO is biology if you're doing biology stuff. So a big shift.
Yes. Sorry, the previous slide. Yeah. These journals, if I understand correctly, the editor gets a notification of any PCIRR. Yeah. Stage 1 acceptance, and then at that point they can approach you and say, please send it to us.
Yeah, so you can, before you even embark on a project, you can ask them, I'm going to embark on this project, would it be okay if I go to the community? Yeah. If I get this from the community, would you endorse this? Would you publish this? So I've seen editors there do this both ways. Mm-hmm. Either you approach them before you embark on and actually want this because sometimes they don't have people who know how to do register reports. And people like Chris Chambers in the community really know how to do this. So sometimes you approach a journal and you say, I really want to do a register report, but you don't have register reports. If I go through the community, would you be willing to publish this? Mm-hmm. And some of them will say yes. Okay. Another thing, and this is what happened with Simine Wazir, they sit and they get all the notifications, and if they see something in their field of expertise or something that they're hoping to promote, then they will contact you. So I've been contacted a number of times by editors saying, this looks really interesting, we would like to publish this.
So is Psych Science going to end up on this side of the screen?
I was really hoping that Simine Wazir is going to make some change. I think she's under a lot of pressure already. We'll see. We'll give her some time, maybe in a year or two. She'll, at least here. Yeah. So I think what she's aiming to do is, for example, replications of papers published in psychological science will go here. Yeah. So she wants more register reports of things that were published in psychological science in order to increase. Sure. Psychological science has a lot to revisit from back before 2012. So yeah, I know she's aiming to go there, but she's testing things out. Okay.
Just out of interest, in your IP, your initial kind of acceptance, your registrations effectively, is there some sort of limit, like as a journal company, how's that
Yeah,
how's that process usually go? And you know, are they like, well, you've said you will get 1,000 people, so you have to get 1,000 people? Is it anything?
Oh, no, it's more of every journal has its own restrictions. So for example, Cortex, I don't do anything that's neuro. So if I get an in-principle acceptance about, I don't know, judgment decision making, Cortex is not going to accept that. So they say it needs to be under neuroscience. The format needs to be, I don't know, under 10,000 words, that kind of thing. Everything is detailed very transparently on the website. When you get the IPA, the recommender or the managerial board, like Chris Chambers, actually goes and looks at the fit and tells you which journals of the friendly journals you can automatically publish with. So they already assess the criteria for you.
But in terms of, so thank you, that's really, really helpful. But also in terms of the actual specifics of the study, like for example, undergraduate studies, right? You got simulated designs that might have like 10,000 simulations in there when you're pre-registering, and you say this is the kind of theoretical distribution we expect. Undergrads won't have enough time to do that, right? And you maybe over 3 years you can collect enough to do something like that. Yeah. Is there any kind of limitations on, we pre-registered this with 50 people, and actually we have 75, isn't that great?
Yeah, that's a general issue that you need to address as a register report journal, supporting journal. So what happens when there are deviations from the plan? So you planned this, but you did this, what's going to happen there? I would just say, because you reminded me of something, one other advantage that peer community has is that they have something called a programmatic register report. So if you have a big project and it's too big, you can break it apart to smaller publications that are all linked together, so that you can have the same editor and the same reviewer team. And then say, okay, stage one is to do this. We finish this, I don't know, you do an exploratory analysis of some sort, and then we do a confirmatory one, and then we do this. So just like building stage by stage, instead of having one huge project, you're just gonna put it into smaller ones. So they support this this kind of thing. And each one of these components is supposed to be a publishable unit. But there is an expectation of certain things, so you can go and see the reviewer criteria is very, very clear, so you can see actually what kind of questions the reviewers are asked to answer. Another thing that happens in peer community is that the editors are trained. They have to go through a quiz and they have to go through some training on open science and what is a register report in order to assess all kinds of things of what happens when there are deviations. So with other journals, I don't know if it's, do they have training? Sometimes I see on Twitter some ridiculous things about how people do register report. Less likely to happen here. And here, if you see an editor doing, and this has happened to me, if you see an editor that's doing things that seem a little bit off, then you can ask for another person to triage, and then the managerial board assesses this all. So you can solve this. Everything is a lot more transparent here than it is in a traditional journal.
Okay. And at the time of submission, let's say you said you were going to use Prolific. But then in your actual thing, you ended up getting undergrads. That would count as a
you would need to
deviation.
consult. No, don't collect the data. If you have this kind of deviation, don't collect the data before you consult with the recommender. And has happened to us, actually happened to me with Chris Chambers twice, that we identified a critical issue. So for example, MTurk changed something about this, and then we said, I'm not going to collect with MTurk anymore. I need to move to Cloud Research, Connect, or to Prolific. So I approached Chris Chambers, and if the deviation is too large, actually Chris Chambers showed me, I didn't know this, that the Open Science Framework has the ability to withdraw a registration and then register a new one and update the registration. So that's possible, but do this with the recommender before you proceed with the data. But that's not about peer community, that's in general with a register report. Be very careful with deviations like that.
Sure, I'm just thinking in terms of the funding ability for undergrads, for example,
One more thing, and I'll get to this in a second, because you reminded me of a lot of important things. How do we fund this? So undergraduate, it's a tricky thing. First of all, I'll show you what we're doing at University of Hong Kong, and I think you can do the same thing here with RHUL Holloway. But generally, when you have an IPA, actually you can go on Twitter. This is what I do, and say, I have an IPA. We already have a guaranteed publication, but we don't have enough participants. Who wants to come in? And you can add co-authors as long as you explain exactly what it is that they contributed. But you can say who has more participants for us. And then they collect the data for you, and then you just build in a model where, so you don't have to be limited by your participant pool or what the undergraduate can get at the library. You can go on the community and get everybody in the world to collaborate, and people have the incentive because they want to be part of what is already accepted for publication.
That's good.
Yeah.
Can you be an author? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, of course.
Like just in terms of author contribution statements and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, traditionally, collecting data doesn't warrant authorship.
So you need two things: data collection, and they have to review drafts and provide feedback. These two things are enough for contributorship to indicate authorship.
Okay.
Yeah. So just data collection by itself is not enough, but they need to also do another thing in addition to that. The big three of how to get this. So undergraduates come to this sometimes not even knowing how to run in ANOVA. They've had maybe a very specific introductory class to statistics. So it's not a lot. So for me it's these three. So a lot of templates, guides, and examples. I'll show you what I mean by that. Openness is that I document everything. So actually, if you follow me on Twitter or Boostka, you will see that every stage, everything that my students do is on Google Docs. I will go and I say, we just submitted this to a peer community. Go and see what my students are doing on this Google Doc. Do you have any feedback? And to my great surprise, people on Twitter come in and provide us with some feedback. So if you're open, you communicate and you invite everybody, the community, to come and have a look. People actually come and pitch in. I think we discovered maybe each other on Twitter or something like that. Yeah. So a lot of people kind of come and do things. This is my process, and this is what I recommend that you do. So you can see that we start from doing Qualtrics. So I give them a list of replication targets, and I say, all these are interesting for me. You can choose which one of those is interesting for you. And then they start by doing a Qualtrics, just trying to imitate exactly what it is that they did over there in the methods. From that, we generate a data set. So Qualtrics has this ability to generate participants for you. Based on this, they write the data analysis code, trying to reproduce as much as possible the methods that were used in the target. And then finally, we do a first draft. Of course, I give them feedback throughout this whole thing. And then we submit this to a peer community, and we do a bunch of rounds with the peer community reviewers. Then following the IPA, there's a data analysis. This typically takes 5 minutes because everything has been written in R Markdown in stage 1. They do a submission because the deadlines are pretty strict. So they do a submission of their thesis, give some feedback, and then we go through stage 2 again at the end after the thesis is already done. In terms of resources, I do everything collaboratively. So actually, if you want to be a co-author on any of these things, you can be. So it's enough for you to just go in and add something meaningful. All of these are Google Docs. So for example, we have a guide on how to do pre-register replications. We have how to do a power analysis, statistical methods. There's so many guides which make everything very, very easy for undergraduates to follow. And I've tested this many, many times. I did not write this by myself. So actually, one of the powers of putting this as a Google Doc is that the teaching assistants and all the students in my classes and the community on Twitter and the core team, people like Hero, are contributing and making this. So each one of those is, I don't know, like 100 pages. You'll see they're very elaborate. So this is the template that I wrote. You're welcome to use this. So they all use this very detailed template of how to write a registered report stage 1. It has everything in it. So you can see here the outline. So actually I write for them what the structure should be for, you write the background and the phenomenon name, and then if it's a replication, you have all these, and if it's an extension, you have all this, and then finally, so you can see just from the outline, it's very detailed, and they just, with a lot of placeholders and notes on what they should put in each and every section. So they just have to follow the template. It's very easy for them to do this. In addition, one of the nice things is that we produce a lot of very good guides. So the beginning, how to teach people to do effect sizes and confidence intervals. Actually, there's a lot more confidence intervals and effect sizes than I ever knew possible. So at the beginning, I set this up with Kit. So that's the Kit that we were talking about before, and Chinyu, 2 of my students. And we got this started, but we are a little bit limited in our ability to do advanced statistical stuff. But then all this amazing team, I don't know if you know Matthew from Twitter, but he's very, very active, very passionate PhD student. He's the statistical advisor for Psychological Bulletin for the meta-analysis stuff. So we invited him, he took the lead, transformed this into the most amazing guide, book on how to calculate effect sizes. And we're hoping that this will be published in AMPPS soon. Replications and extensions, all kinds of reasons why you would want to do replications, but not just replications, but also add extensions. I won't go into this because I know you already have a little bit of this mindset, but I'll just say that people usually focus on replications being good for verification and reproducibility and replicability. These are almost taken for granted. But I've shown with the undergraduates that actually you can do a lot in order to advance theory with replications and extensions. You can do a lot in order to measure, do things regarding measurement. So if, for example, the DV that they've used was a dichotomous choice, but you want a continuous variable. So we add this as an extension in the next page. So first a choice, then a continuous measure. And then you can see some alignment. Sometimes we randomize the order in order to see if there's, if something comes first. So you can address theory, methods, and generalizability in order to expand the literature. So it's not just about replication, it's about a lot more than that. So there's a lot of reasons for you to do replications. It's more systematic, less effort, lower cost, it's measurable, and so forth. But I really like this one, and this is what I adopt in my own research as well. When you do a replication and extension, I think the big problem for thesis is that the students have no idea of the literature, and they're not very good with methods, so they try too much and they go too far, and they sometimes have very small samples that they can, so nothing works at the end. Nothing works. They feel like they're maybe incompetent, maybe they haven't done it, they've wasted an entire year, sometimes more than that, in doing research. But then it's not really clear that they're the ones to blame. It could be that what they've tried to build on were not solid foundations. So if you do a replication and extension, you can see, based on the results, where the fault is. And once we started doing a lot of that, we saw that actually the fault is not with extensions. Sometimes the fault is with the replication, so things don't replicate. Sometimes we've actually shown the replication fails, but the extension, we've done some change that allowed for the effect to emerge. So we've corrected a problem, so we allowed for things to advance. So when you separate this to extensions, replications and extensions, you can see if the problem is in the literature or the problem is with extension, and then at least you contributed something to showing that the effect is replicable. So you contributed to the community. Funding. What I was able to convince the University of Hong Kong is I told them, if I can show you guaranteed publication by a student, would you be willing to fund the data analysis? So first I needed to explain to them what a register report is, and they thought this is too good to be true. What do you mean you have an in-principle acceptance before data collection? How is this possible? So it's a real evolution also for the funders. Because for the funders, it's like, there's no more risk. It's a guaranteed publication. They already know that this is going to appear in a journal. So they were willing to fund up to $1,000 for the data collection for 30 students. So I just finished the first round, and now I'm applying for a second round. And it seems like this is by far the best use of money that University of Hong Kong has ever done. 30 publications with $1,000 each. It's amazing. With $1,000, you can run, so I do judgment decision-making stuff, attributions, very simple vignettes with slight manipulations, and then seeing what the results are on DV. You can run about 600, 800 participants with a 5-minute experiment on Prolific with $1,000, which is sufficient for most of our stuff. So this can fund things. So you can go to RHUL Holloway and say, we have 30 guaranteed publications. Would you fund this? Perhaps they'll be willing to do similar things. Okay, good. So this was about the thesis process and what I do with my students, but we do a lot more than this. So you got a little bit of a taste of the different activities that we do. At some point, Hiro and I were talking about We have so many replications. We've done so many research projects, so many resources. We should code this at some point. So we're also doing all kinds of meta science activities. Some people in the core team are trying to make sense of all the activities that we've done. We also do science assessments. So students in my courses also revisit some of the findings and they find mistakes. And sometimes this leads to expression of concern or even identification of fraud. So in one of the projects that I had with RHUL, this was Heyman and Ariely, what happened over there is, so one of the studies, study 1, if you even just run this through stat check, you see that there's some problems with the statistics over there. Our application was actually successful, but psychological science issued together with Dan Ariely an expression of concern over the results. So it was nice to see an expression of concern based on what undergraduates at the University of Hong Kong identified. So that was an interesting development. And a few months later came out something bigger with that team. This is the impact that we've had, and I think this is already outdated, but around 120 replications and extensions with the University of Hong Kong and people like RHUL that joined us. So very big impact for students work. We have about 20 open guides and templates and a lot of assessments that we've done. So here's an invitation for you to do something similar at RHUL Holloway, and I'll give you some options for you to do this. So everything is open for you to take and run this at RHUL Holloway. You don't need to credit, you don't need to ask me, just use this, it's for you to do as you like. One of the things, for example, a Brazilian team, when I went to Brazil and I was asking them, would you run this kind of thing? They said, there's no way our undergraduates are going to be able to do what you do with a University of Hong Kong. I said, okay, so let's start smaller. How about you take the replications that we've already published? Everything is open, all the projects and the pre-registration. Translate this to Portuguese and run this with a Brazilian sample. And they've done that with their undergraduates. And now they have 5 or 6 publications, just taking what we've done, translating this to Portuguese and running this in their own samples and getting published in different journals, showing the cross-cultural differences. What is amazing is that actually there are not that many differences, because I'll just give you one example. Sometimes we run several studies from one article. So in one of the studies had 4. So one article had 4 studies, 2 were successful, 1 was mixed, and 1 was failed. And then the reviewers were saying, something is wrong with your MTurk prolific sample. This doesn't make any sense. We ran this again, we got the same results, and this was published. The Brazilians ran exactly the same thing in Brazilian Portuguese, and their results aligned with us rather than with the target article. So once again, 2 successful, 1 mixed, and 1 failed. Very similar effect sizes, which is remarkable. So showing the cross-cultural replication of our findings. So that's really nice. So they can just, undergraduates, instead of them starting everything from scratch, take what we've done and run this, I don't know, here somewhere. So it's an option. So do your own, join us, or use our materials. If you need any help with any of this, we're helping the Brazilians. I'm happy to help you, sit with you, and see what's suitable for you. This is my conclusion, and I believe in this very strongly. By now we've shown that students are our most underappreciated, undervalued stakeholders. They can do amazing research. They can meet the highest standard of open science. We just need to give them the opportunity to do that. I think your students will surprise you just how good they are with this. We're a little bit brainwashed and biased by bad practices that we were trained on. These students come with a blank slate. And actually, they asked me the right questions. I learned a lot from working with them. I learned a lot from working with RHUL and the team that we have. because they don't come with all the biases that I've been trained on. So it's really an amazing journey. I really think that we need to integrate open science replication and extensions into our curriculum, into our guiding thesis, so forth. And you can really do this on your own, or you can join us. Lots of good options. So everything that I told you about is on my website. You can scan this, go on my website. If you want to talk more, this is my email, feel free. All our activities are also on the mailing list. It comes out every 2-3 months. So all the talks, all the publications, all the preprints, lots of opportunities for you to come in and join as a co-author in any of the many activities that we have. So happy to hear from you. Just let me know how to do open science together. Thank you.
Thank you.